Okay, so welcome to another video in my series covering the Canadian teams heading into the draft lottery. Today I'll be talking to my friend Jeremy about the Vancouver Canucks. Should be a real riot. Not like the riot in Vancouver after they lost the final to the Bruins in 2011. Just a lot of fun, that's what I mean. How are you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm good as always. Good as always.
That's excellent. Glad to hear that. Now, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but my Uncle Terry is actually a Canucks fan. He's from Dawson Creek. And when my son was born a few months ago, he actually sent me this little hoodie for him.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think he anticipated that he would wear it, and he probably won't. And actually, while I'm getting rid of things, I know all you Canuck fans really love the Mark Messier era in Vancouver. So I've got this nice little headshot of Messier for you. So anyway, how about we start with you telling me, when did you start cheering for Vancouver?
Cheering hard? Actually, it's in the very recent, or the recent past. I'm a Canucks fan. I was born into it, right? I grew up in Vancouver. The family was Canuck fans. I played a lot of minor hockey, didn't have a lot of time to cheer for a team, didn't really jump fully into it. It was only when I moved to Alberta that I fully embraced, I don't even want to say the Orca, but I embraced the Orca only when I moved to Alberta. So 96 is really when things kind of, yeah, it's enveloped me now. Yeah.
Gotcha. So then tell me about your best memory. I guess you would have missed the 94 run.
No, being that my family was so diehard in the way of the Canucks fans, it was always a part of me. So, I mean, I saw the 82 run. I remember the 89 getting beat out by the Flames. I remember all of these things. It just didn't affect me to the degree it does now when the Canucks lose. But 96 all the way up until now, and I'll be honest with you, the reason why I'm so devout as a Canucks fan happened in 04. Living in Calgary and only a short little walk from the Red Mile. And I thought, you know, I've been in Alberta for a few years. Maybe it's time I start looking towards cheering for a home team for a change. And I don't know if anybody's ever tried to change their allegiances before, but you quickly understand that part of fandom is knowing the history of a team. And when you try to cheer for a different team like that, it's a hard thing to do, to be able to forget everything that you know about the team that, you know, grasps your heart kind of thing, right? So ever since then, I've realized that there is no other team for me, and it has to be the Canucks. Good or bad?
No, I get that. A lot of bad here being an Oilers fan.
Fair enough.
So let's talk about that 2004, because here's the thing about me. I've gone through phases with Vancouver. Back when they had Bertuzzi, Morrison, Jovanovski, I think there's a stretch there, maybe 2000 to 2004. I pulled for them every year in the playoffs.
They were easy to love back then.
And that's just it. And in 04, I remember they played Calgary in the first round. They were missing Bertuzzi. Don't even get me started on the Bertuzzi-Moore incident. Talk about that for hours.
That's something else, yeah.
Exactly. They were missing him, and was Kluche hurt too?
Mid-season, I do believe he came down with a bit of an injury. He was ready to go for playoffs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we use that as an excuse, but he definitely wasn't playing the way that he had been playing earlier in the season.
See, but I felt like that was their year in that window, because they lost that tough one to Calgary, and then Calgary went on the run. That could have been Vancouver that did that. Anyway, then I think it was 05, 06, Kessler, Burrows, BX, these guys started to become more prominent, much easier to hate them, and that eventually culminated in 2011 when then you had guys like Lapierre on the team as well, Torres, even though he's an ex-Oiler. Just a group of guys that was so easy to hate. I remember I lived with a Canucks fan. We had the NHL Center Ice package, so I had to watch the Canucks. And at that time, I was really starting to become disillusioned with the Oilers, so I would say, yeah, just shut off the other game, go to the Canuck game. Lived with the guy from October to December before he decided to move back to BC, and was just hiding this hatred for Vancouver inside of me. And then when he was leaving, it was at his farewell, and I had a few drinks, and I said, look, I got a confession to make. I hate Vancouver, like, can't stand him. But now...
You couldn't have surprised him. We're so used to hearing these things, right?
And I'm sure I didn't do a very good job of hating it. or hiding it, sorry. There you go.
Yeah, see? Well, I know.
But then they have started to transition again, I'm feeling, where I like Bo Horvat a lot. I think he's a stud. And I like Hutton on the blue line. I like some of the young pieces, and they've moved Kessler, Bieksa, I think Burrows might be done. So like I said, I've gone through these phases where I'm starting to like them a little more.
You're almost a Canucks fan because we go through these phases as well. You know?
Exactly. But so the next question I want to ask you, actually before I get into the next question, this is actually my favorite memory of you as a Vancouver fan. This was back in 2013 when they had just lost to the Sharks in the playoffs.
And there was still hope then too, you know, and that was the toughest part.
Yes, definitely.
We had hope.
Expectations. Yeah.
And I don't know about expectations, but we recognized that the roster didn't look much different, and we'd seen the success that they had had before. I got to say that in 13, when my sweep occurred, it felt like the NHL as a league was transitioning. For good or for bad, but it changed the way a team would actually plan out its roster. And I think that's affected the league play since that time.
Interesting.
In my belief.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Well, and we recognized it in 2011. And after 2011, we started to see that there was a huge difference in the way the game is played from regular season to postseason. You know, the league was always trying to transition into a speed game, a high offense game. But man, when it comes down to it in the playoffs, they still like that rough brand of hockey. And teams that were built for success in the regular season were starting to show kinks in the armor where that wasn't necessarily going to show success into the postseason.
And I agree with you, because the one thing I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years being an Oilers fan is that I watch some of these skilled guys play, then the season ends and the playoffs begin, and right from the first puck drop, I'm watching and I'm going, I can't even imagine these guys playing in this kind of environment.
Yeah.
I can't, like, duh, they obviously aren't making the playoffs, and there's reasons for that, but just looking at the style of play, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more that it's a totally different game once you get to the playoffs, and you have to keep that in mind when you're building your team.
And I think that's the balance that a GM needs to find, is you got to build a team there that's, well, I mean, look at the Kings, how, you know, they're managing to scrape into the playoffs, only to show everybody that that's not what they're built for, the regular season. They're built for that 7-game series. And I think that's where the league's going to start to go, if that's my opinion.
I agree with you. Now, just one more question on your background. Who's your all-time favorite Canuck? Messier?
It's funny because, as I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the Canucks in their heydays. Bure and Linden, I mean, gotta be. I was a defenseman when I played, so I always took a shine towards, you know, Dave Babbage, love Babbage, Harold Snaps back in the day. So it does show that, it shows my age, number one, but it shows that I do, I watched them with, you know, some degree of concentration when I was young. But I always took a shine to the game that those guys played. And yeah, I like to watch Bure streak up and down the ice. But to me, it wasn't one about his 50 goals. It wasn't anything like that. My favorite part about Bure was the hit on Sherla. That was new respect.
In Dallas in the playoffs.
And that was the big one that changed my mind about Bure. But I mean, as far as Canucks overall, it's got to be Linden, heart and soul type of guy, leader. You know, and obviously shows because the city itself still embraces that guy.
Yeah.
You know, they're still showing support at this year.
Yeah, no, I know. Jovanovski's the guy that I was always a huge fan of. I remember '96 when he went up against Lindros.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, when he went to Vancouver. They were an exciting team back then.
I love the West Coast Express years, boy. There was just, and again, back to that whole rough and tumble brand of hockey. You know, Canucks were known for that for a long time, coming up through the 70s and 80s. Yeah. They were a team that, you know, you might beat them. You would often beat them, but they would make you pay for the win. Yeah. And I embraced that. I really like that kind of brand of hockey. And so watching a guy like Jovanovski and Bertuzzi out there, and these guys who were able to, you know, enforce their will upon the other team, I just love that stuff.
Okay, so let's move to this past season.
Yeah.
They went from making the playoffs with, I think, 100 points just about last year and losing to Calgary in the first round to finishing third last?
Third last.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah, it's funny because you listen to, like I do a lot on the media and listening to what they have to say about what went on and all that stuff. And I don't think this team was built well at the beginning of the season. I thought I saw some weaknesses in there. They didn't replace Kessler well enough. Sure, Sutter coming in, that was not a bad stopgap anyways, until they thought that their young guys were ready to take on that role. But an early injury or two, they sure showed what type of team they were up until Christmas, because they were already kind of bringing up the hind, quarters of that thing. It was pretty awful. But then, they started losing guys to injury. And Bo Horvat being thrown into maybe a role that he wasn't quite ready for as a sophomore. There's a lot of things. I'd be third last. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that went wrong in the season. They were still able to eke out a couple of goals, or a couple of games. But Miller being injured, Henrik missing significant amounts of time, which doesn't happen. And like I say, Sutter, while we never really got to appreciate what he was able to do for the Canucks because he was there so few games. But like I say, it sure thrust young guys into roles that they were not ready for. And I think a lot of the young guys made the team simply because of maybe an ideal that the GM brought. Yeah. They knew want to bring in the young guys and things like that. So he was obligated to give it a try. But I didn't have high hopes for it by any means. Sure, you got Sedins. There's always wins that are going to happen. Points are going to be gotten. But to be successful, it wasn't happening this year.
Yeah, well then, so what is the plan? Because I feel like of all the teams in the league, Vancouver is the one where it seems obvious what they should do, and they seem to sort of be doing that, but they're not totally in.
That's that whole retool catchphrase that they use, right?
Is that what they're doing?
Well, this is what they say, right? They're they're thinking they're going to be slowly able to integrate some of the younger guys, maybe get rid of some of the bottom six, grinders and stuff like that, and be able to supplement their high-end, their superstars. What do they got? Sedins, and I've been happy with the way the Sedins played. I'm not really all about that brand of hockey, but you got to be able to appreciate what those two can do, and they've been doing it with limited support. In my vision, I think what they're going to do is try and, if it was my vision, it's keep drafting a couple of years and get those high picks and start supplementing your skilled guys, these older skilled guys, with somebody that's going to be able to up and come and learn from those skilled guys the game that needs to be played. Just by the players that they're bringing in, they've got an idea of the type of team they want to be. I just don't know if they're planning on doing it by the draft or free agency or NCAA or whatever they're doing. You see the type of individual they're bringing in. I just don't know if it's a distinctive plan on. With a plan, I would say that there's got to be a finish date. And I don't see a finish date on this yet. You know what I mean? I don't see that it's 2 years away or 3 years away. But I mean, maybe that's just the league and the way this works now is you just build a team. And like I said about LA, look at the style of game that the guys play. And if you can eke into the playoffs, everybody's got a chance. And maybe that's what they're counting on, is being able to build a team that they know can compete in the playoffs in that rough and tumble game, while still being able to eke out enough points. I mean, Jim Benning this season, right in the beginning of the season, was saying this was a 100-point team again. Yeah. And I think a lot of the fans were kind of shocked and taken aback by that. They didn't see it from what was on paper. But you've almost got to have some faith in what they're doing. Obviously, these are the guys that know and have control over the team. You're going, okay, let's do this. Okay, well, you're at their mercy, right? It hurts.
Is he able to do what he wants to do? Because I know some people think the ownership's, meddle in there. Because I feel like Vancouver, what they're trying to do is good in theory, but they don't seem to be executing it. Because I agree, keep the Sedins, let them mentor these young guys, but
the season's been an oxymoron.
Yeah, but don't keep them so long that you don't get value when you move them. I feel like they're really riding.
I think that in itself is a mistake, because I don't think the Sedins are going anywhere. If the Sedins, I guess this offseason will tell the tale. Yeah. If they are willing to be moved and can kind of see the writing on the wall, I think they've maybe got 2 years left in the league before they say bye-bye and head off to the SEL to kind of finish off their careers. Because I do believe that they want to go to Moto for a year or two. I think that them being very community oriented, that they'll look at retiring in Vancouver.
Yes.
And I think that's the idea behind everything. And now that Lyndon is in the president's role, I think he's going to see to it that that happens to the best of his control. If something were to present itself that would help the team out, I think the Sedins would be behind that, a trade option or whatever it might be to bring some young guys in. I could see something like that happening, but it wouldn't be surprising to me at all to see them stick it out until they're ready to hang them up.
Okay, let's shift our attention to the draft lottery. In my opinion, the one team that needs to win the lottery is Vancouver because, like I said, the plan's good in theory. I think if they got Matthews, that would really push them in the right direction, right?
I do
believe. It's going to
believe.
set them up for a while.
Yeah.
I'm
not a big fan of Matthews myself, but it's quality of prospects. And for a long time, the Canucks have been suffering in that area.
Speaking of prospects, there is a prospect for the Bruins named Jeremy Lauzon, which is your name.
Which is my name, yeah.
Would you ever play for the Boston Bruins?
Oh, and see, this is the push because I saw that he got drafted this past year, and I went, oh my goodness, that's crazy. And then I thought about the opportunity I have to buy myself a Bruins jersey with Lauzon on the back. And I'm like, I got to buy that. I would buy that jersey. I hate the Bruins. Obviously 2011 and Cam Neely and a lot of different things going on there. But I don't think that's an opportunity to pass up. Lauzon is a kind of a unique last name. It's not every day you see something like that out there. There's no Jones or nothing, right? So, geez, I would be all over that.
Good stuff. Okay, tell me your best case scenario for the lottery. Top three.
I'm a Canucks fan, and I want to pick second. Isn't that sick?
Because of who's at that number 2 spot?
Not because of who's at number 2, but I'm afraid that the hockey gods would see to it that if I pick number 1 is not going to do as well as they possibly could have. I feel
Imagine
jinxed.
that. Imagine that.
I feel jinxed. Well, it hasn't helped the Oilers either.
Well, exactly. So you want them at 2?
As much as Matthews would help me, boy, oh boy, do I like those Finns. You know, they both fulfill an area of need, but the biggest need for the Canucks is elite prospects. That's, you know, whether that's whatever. I just think that, and coming from a guy who's not a huge fan of Matthews, I think that that's a good trade chip.
I would agree. See, and I'm in the same situation as an Oilers fan.
Yeah.
I don't want them to win the top spot. There's a stigma. You're a first overall pick, you're right into the NHL. They don't need that. I don't care how good the guys. They already just did it with McDavid. And when that happened, before they won the lottery, I said to Kyle, the Senators fan I had on, that's the last thing they need is to win the lottery. You got to break this cycle of having that guy. I'd much rather pick 4 or 5 and maybe get one of those Finns or you know, one of the other guys, Nylander or Tkachuk or whoever. And then there's no problem sending this guy back to junior or sending him to the American Hockey League and letting him develop because he's not first overall. That expectation's not there. You can just develop him as an elite level prospect. So I understand that. I totally do.
You know, I say that, but at the same time, I mean, 1970. We're still reeling from 1970, you know, and not getting the opportunity to get Perreault. You know, that hurts. And maybe this is an opportunity to kind of, you know, get the karma back going to you know, to kind of get it back. That's my hope. I honestly, to be happy, I would top 3, fantastic for the Canucks. Top 3, that's all I'm hoping for. And I mean, that's a realistic goal too, right, overall. So, and you had to know that the Canucks get their lowest finish in how many years, and then all of a sudden the lottery rules change. And I mean, our biggest percentage is what, 5th this year. That's where our majority stake is sitting, and it's just like, really? We could trade an elite goaltender for 5th.
No, and I'll get into that with Braden when I talk to him about the Oilers. Do you have a preference for the other 2? Do you want to see Canadian teams in there?
Do you know? No. Ottawa and Montreal, you know, East Coast, don't have to face them often. Well enough. Not a fan of Toronto at all. So I would like it, to be honest with you, if it stays out of Calgary, Edmonton, or Toronto's hands, I'm happy.
What about Boston?
Boston can have it. We're not going to be facing them anytime soon, right? And well, you love to hate them. My hate dies with Marchand, so. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let you do the honors here, and you can, if you want, just run one. We can talk about it. Run the next one. We can talk about, or you can just run all three, and then we can chat about it after.
All right.
Totally.
So
hopefully it doesn't stick like.
I'm all. I've got the control here. Yep. All right. Oh man. You know.
I had Columbus. I think it's been twice now. I really have no feeling one way or the other about them. I couldn't care less. And the funny thing about Columbus is I picked them to have a huge season, win their division. I had Ryan Johansson. This is embarrassing. I had Ryan Johansson winning the Art Ross. And did you trade? Did I trade you Johansson?
No. In one of the pools, this is a guy who I picked up. I've always had a love affair with Ryan Johansson.
BC boy, right?
BC boy, right? And so I love the guy. But the Columbus Blue Jackets, it's just such an irrelevant team to me. Yeah. You know, it was okay. Like when they had Johansson, great. And Boone Jenner, fantastic. Do I care about the Blue Jackets? They could, 29 teams in the league, okay, whatever. Yeah. I shouldn't say that because, whatever, but yeah.
No, I feel the same way.
All right, I'm moving on because I don't have anything to say. Hi.
Arizona, see,
this is awful.
Yeah, and they wouldn't get Matthews at that spot, so, I mean, they'd get a good player.
Going back to digress, Columbus could replace their Ryan Johansson because they were kind of without the #1 center, so.
Or they could even flip picks there with Arizona because, they'd want Matthews.
Yeah, and
excellent
be able to pick something
marketing
up too.
Campaign for them.
Man, oh man.
Anyway.
Weak.
In Toronto.
Heartbreaking, And that shows the Canucks at 5th behind the Oilers.
So yeah, they would have been bumped from 3rd to number 5. So if they come in at 5, let's assume Matthews is gone, the 2 Finns are gone.
Yeah.
One of Tkachuk. Well, if the Oilers are picking at 4, I'm thinking maybe the defenseman Chychrun's gone. Who would Vancouver? Would you like to see Nylander or?
To be honest with you, I think they'd go for like a Dubois.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like Dubois' game. I know they said that if to be honest with you, I actually think they'd look at trading the pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's some teams out there that would like to have that high pick. Canucks have been hurting for defensemen forever, and really need that guy who's. I mean, they've got some good prospects coming up, Tramkin, Hutton, and these guys and everything, but they need a right side guy. And I know I'm a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm a little bit biased here, but I want that rough, big defenseman, and I don't see anybody there aside from Chychrun. Yeah. I would like to see them make a move and move that 5th pick, to be honest with you, for somebody like a Dumba or a Trouba or something along those lines, and something that could help a little bit more quickly. This is a little heartbreaking, really. Yeah. That hurts.
I get that.
That hurts.
No, totally do.
Because now that means I'm going to want to finish low again next year, so I can try this again.
All right. Well, thanks for sitting down. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot. Yeah,
no problem.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's it for today. I'm going to be talking Oilers with my good friend Braden later this week. I'll see you then.